I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Debbie, here with Ruth Ammon, Production Designer on the post-apocalyptic limited series Station 11, three-time Emmy nominee, by the way, Ruth Ammon. Ruth, I adored Station 11. I miss it. I was just so invested in the characters and immersed in the story. I love how they made me feel about fighting another day after, a pandemic almost wipes out the whole planet. I would love to know what you, just generally speaking, what did you love most about Station 11?
Well, Station 11, I think, took up about 2 years of my life, and I started it in one kind of frame of mind, and somewhere in the middle when we paused for not only hiatus to regroup and, find the summer, but also when COVID happened. So it really became like kind of parallel with our lives. So it was this very strange art imitating life, life imitating art, and it became one thing. I had read, I think I was on another job in Hungary, which was a 19th century piece. And when I heard about Patrick and Hero doing this show, I had to be part of it. And I didn't even know what Station 11 was. And I listened to Emily St. John's novel as I was driving around, finishing up my other work. And I found it so incredibly moving. And especially, being someone who's on the road all the time for work, that idea of traveling artist, it just obviously connected with me, and I loved Patrick and Hero's work, so I was very happy to get an interview with them.
Yeah, and then the rest is history. Obviously, you got the job. I've never quite seen anything like this. I mean, I was expecting I thought, oh, okay, here's another show about a pandemic. All right, well, I don't know if I want to see that because we're already living with such horrifying pandemic, but it's not really about that. This is about art and artists and how important they are to humanity and how they live on no matter what, against the odds. And I really responded to that. And I've spoken to quite a few people from the show already, and they all love that idea. And for you as an artist, I just wonder how it feels for a show to put artists on a pedestal. How does that actually, what did you think of that?
I think it was one of the most organic feeling shows ever. I mean, I think Patrick and Hero interviewed very carefully, so all of us were on the same page. There really wasn't anyone who came in with a different vision. It was how we kind of sculpted that vision together. Everything Helen brought to the room, everything I brought to the room, we kind of riffed off each other all the time. And I think Patrick really understands the mind of the artist and the kind of internal conflict of an artist who, not only has to create and has a vision for things, but has to collaborate and manage and lead. So he's very tuned into that. And I think just selected this really great group of artists who kind of pretty seamlessly work together, other than, the obvious difficulties of time and money and COVID. We were all people who, if we had read another post-apocalyptic script, would have said no right away. I think it was the combination of Patrick and Hero and Emily's novel that really attracted us to be part of it.
Yeah. And when it comes to your designs, what I was immediately attracted to was how the pandemic in this world, it felt like everything had just stopped. And there are scenes where we see the spaces in which humanity used to occupy have now been overrun by nature. And that juxtaposition of the industrial and the organic, I found actually unexpectedly quite moving. I'm curious to know what was the thought process behind how you landed on those looks ultimately in the show.
Well, I think, Hero and I definitely pulled a lot of the same references. As, in the beginning, you share each other's deck and you talk, a deck is a book of images to start discussion about the look of a show or a look of a set. And I think Joel Sternfeld for sure was one, and he had photographed the High Line in New York before it was transformed into a park. And I'd actually been on that High Line when it was, you know, an overgrown trade track in my younger days in New York. And, you know, I did a scene for an early movie where the sun came up on that train track and there were flowers and animals, and it was just incredible that, you know, and this was a long time ago, that nature was taking over in the middle of this urban environment. We took that idea and kind of moved forward with it, and a lot of, you know, we kind of originally started in an urban environment during, you know, just a throwback to Chicago, and then took that whole idea broad in a less urban environment and kind of rewilding the planet. And it was weird because, like, simultaneously when I met Patrick and Hero, I was reading a book by Isabella Tree, which is about, you know, rewilding a farm in, I think it's Sussex, England, and how, you know, and just that idea of letting nature come back itself and not cutting and grooming, just, it resonated with this show. And I think that stillness and that growth is the thing that makes it very positive and not a harsh, you know, it is hard being on the road without electricity and fast food and all that, but maybe it's a lot better. And I think it was just great for all of us to see something very positive and thoughtful for an alternate future.
I actually want to take that even slightly further, because I felt it was weirdly aspirational. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we are all living in this environment where we are running 100 miles an hour. Everything's electronic, devices, screens, disconnection. You know, we're on Zoom right now. Climate change is a real problem that so many people in power don't even think is real. So this show, without saying that, was able to show us a glimpse of what rewilding the planet might actually look like.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came from your imagination. And so did you have any inspiration apart from reading books? Was there any art, or was there any other films or anything like that kind of informed how you're going to make it look?
There was a book I had for a few years, a friend gave to me, was Brian Ulrich, and I think he's from Chicago, but he was kind of, he took a lot of photographs of kind of big box stores that had been emptied and just the stillness there. And that was a real inspiration for so many things. He'd taken some parking lots, and this is, you know, his book is probably 10, 15 years old. So it was, his vision was really informative to me. And also, I think the way Hero approaches directing is, he seems to me to be someone who stops and looks and watches, as opposed to imposing himself on a frame. And so I really listened very much to him and his DP Christian about how they were going to set up the scene and what their tone was. And that, along with, you know, not trying to steal the frame, but to build the frame.
Yeah, and it also, I felt there was a scale in your design. There was, and like, it kind of gave me this sense of the enormity of the world around us that we probably don't appreciate. A great example is the ice and the snow when Dr. Chowdhury walks out and is enveloped by these huge sculptures of snow. Was that difficult to conceptualize and then to realize on the screen?
I mean, at a certain point, it all feels very natural. And like, I know for me, like, because, I mean, there was a certain point where we were going to go to suburbs in year 20. And I did not want to do that, because I felt there would be so much time and money put to making the suburbs or these city look like what, and it wasn't what we wanted to do. We didn't want to see broken glass and doors and, you know, derelict buildings.
Yeah.
So field sculptures was definitely something I was full on for. So I really really was very, designing the snow was part of what we did. And, we built 3D models of this. So it was a way to do exactly what you talked about, which was to build scale. And sometimes like having these odd sculptures in the middle of vast fields, whether it's a Kentucky Fried
Yeah.
Chicken bucket or a snow sculpture. I mean, it's funny, and it says more than like trying to deal with infinitesimal little details that just get busy and lost, and also end up being CG visual effects. And, none of us wanted the visual effects to lead the story. We wanted as much as we could get in camera, and that CG would only help clear up and further the story a bit more without like taking control of the frame.
Yeah, it's so important for this particular story because it's so tactile and it's so like it's back to basics, the stillness, and that in-camera work that you do, the Kentucky Fried Chicken thing, for example, it just, without saying much, it says quite so much about this world that they've found themselves in 20 years later after the pandemic has hit everybody. Going back to the pilot, directed by Hiro Murai, just like insanely amazing director. I really appreciated the detail that was put into the staging of the Shakespearean play, which kind of opens the whole series in the theatre. Was there much of a challenge in getting that right? Did you enjoy that particular aspect?
That was actually, that was basically learning about Hiro and his process. And I think that was the telltale, and that after understanding his point of view, I was able to kind of move on after that. I mean, the theater alone, we had so many choices, and we ended up on the Chicago Auditorium, designed by Louise Sullivan and Adler, I can't remember, but that theater itself was a very for the people theater. And I think that was part of Hiro's purpose there, that it's like the people's theater as opposed to like elitist theater. And also because it was just so beautiful inside with these like rich ochre chairs, like they already had like a visual impact that wasn't something you'd seen before. I mean, I remember when we all walked in, we just were like, whoa, this is something else. And, just talking about, staging the, what are they called? Oh, the Northland, the English, I
know what you mean. Yeah. Whatever it's called.
What happens is you have all these words and they're just so much a part of your life, and then you go to the next show and you have a whole new vocabulary.
There's only so much space in here, right? Like
yeah, but that was such an enormous amount of fun. And we're just trying to balance out, like, that there would be enough scenery that it would be entertaining for people who weren't Shakespearean followers, but were people who were going to see Arthur as, fans and groupies. So we were trying to balance that out. And so it was like the right amount of spectacle. And then I think we just loved it so much that Patrick made sure that all those rocks made it onto the trucks that went up to Toronto after we went back to work during COVID.
Yeah, it was so beautifully austere. I just love that staging. I wanted to go to that play.
Me too.
So yeah, the airport location, which is a really fundamental part of the story as we move forward in the series. I wouldn't call it brutalist inside. There's some really great wood paneling. How did you find it? And were you just thrilled that you were able to get this unused terminal to just do what you wanted to it?
So that the brutalist is right for one part of it. You're dead on, spot on. But the terminal, I mean, the airport, Seven City Airport, is made up of I think about 5 locations. One, there was a decommissioned terminal, and we kind of opened it all up and built all the shops out and kind of built like the both year 20 and year 0. We, that was all like one location. It was huge and we had a lot of access there. But then we felt like we always wanted a meeting point, and with the lines there, it just was you couldn't get clear sight lines. But having gateways and having those big windows and some of that kind of airport vernacular already existing was a huge help. We were extremely lucky, given that it was COVID, that just searching for a rotunda, we found the Ontario Science Center, which is a totally different architecture. And I love that about airports, is that they kind of build in each other, so you can transition from one period to another without, so long as you make visual connections with signage or whatever details. And that atrium was the Science Center, which was during COVID, so we were able to clear it out and have access there for almost a month or two, which would never happen because they're very busy. And that was designed by Japanese architect Moriyama, and full-on brutalist.
Yeah, it's
so. Then we built the Museum of Civilization. We built that on a sound stage, and we built the entrance of that in the terminal. Right outside the airport, we were allowed a certain amount of space within a fenced-in area. So because we actually had a scene where we wanted to see the Gichigumi plane 20 years later, we weren't allowed to use that apron because it was active. So that's where we came up with the Zen sculpture, and we built that in yet another location about an hour away, which was another airport that had a couple of dead runways. So we built that there. And so it's a lot of pieces that you put together to make one world. I think it's 5 or 6 locations. And I mean, that's really the fun of it all. And that's actually how you build scale, and how you build a world is by kind of pushing the limits on interior and exterior. And, it helps on staging scenes differently. The atrium, we really wanted, we had lots of options to stage the last performance, outside. That would have been easy, but Patrick really wanted it inside, and so did I. And we just fought tooth and nail. And I mean, we had to put those cars and that Winnebago in an elevator. We were measuring inches and taking the tires off and to get them in there. And we did it, and it was pretty phenomenal to see that. And I think seeing so much expressiveness with Helen's costume and Steve Cousins' lighting, and then the kind of brutalist architecture there. I mean, that night was really pretty moving and spectacular. It was just completely overwhelming after a year of working on a project to see that happen.
Oh man, I had no idea. I had no idea, because all the airport scenes are just so beautifully rendered, and that atrium, I just kept looking at it thinking, what did they make this? What is this? Amazing. And there's the play that Kirsten stages with well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just incredible. It's just a really great way to end the series. Ruth, we have run out of time. We have that beautiful Zen garden with the hollowed out plain, and with the sun rising, setting even. Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous work. I really congratulate you on some wonderful work. I hope you're back at the Emmys. You've got 3 nominations for Heroes. Let's hope this might be your 4th.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's really fun remembering.